Howdy, howdy, Sea Devil here, and welcome to some testing of some dwarf infantry versus lizardmen infantry. Very specifically, the Longbeards and Warriors of Dragonfire Pass versus Red-Crested Skinks, the cohort of Sotek and Saurus Warriors with Shields. Now, this testing came about because I was looking at some games of Move Hacker and Umaze, and they have been using the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass, and the last game of Move Hackers that I casted, the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass did really well, and I wanted to go have a look at them, and I also wanted to look at some of my testing I did sort of a year and a half ago when the Lizardmen first came out, or maybe 2.5 years ago. I can't remember exactly when. Really when game 2 was new, like 2 years ago maybe. Anyways, I wanted to really look at the effectiveness of Warriors of Dragonfire Pass in the dwarf build, and wanted to look at should I put them back in my build, and I really want to tweak my build to make it a little bit better as well. One of the things I've talked about is that I believe Red-Crested Skinks are actually a poor choice for Lizardmen in this matchup because they just essentially get handled by Dowie infantry. This testing will actually show precisely what I mean in very clear terms. Now, not to say Red-Crested Skinks can't be useful. They certainly can, but they're more of a 2-of sort of flanking unit, getting around the back, getting into Dwarf Warriors and Miners where they're going to do good, but they do very poorly against Warriors of Dragonfire Pass and Longbeards, which are sort of the mainstay for the Dowie front line in this matchup. So, first of all, I'll want to go over the test, and then I will go over sort of the spreadsheet work and how I evaluate the testing. Now, I will say, about testing, when I do testing, this is just one piece of the puzzle. It is just how I do testing. It is not the end-all and be-all. It is very myopic. It is one small little thing and one way of testing. When I do my testing, it just gives me some insight into how the units perform. There are many ways to test, and there are many ways to evaluate. I do try to make my testing repeatable so that it can be done by anybody who wants to. And I try to make the results understandable as I can so you can really look at them and figure out what you're going to do. So I'll show you how I did the testing, and then we'll go to the spreadsheet and I will show you how I evaluate the testing, and then some of the interesting things and changes that have really happened in this matchup. And this is kind of why I like making my testing repeatable, because then I can go backwards and look at testing that I've done 2 years ago and compare to what it is today, and then sort of make some evaluate how I'm going to build based off of that. So basically I have here a test of Red-Crested Skinks versus the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass. I'm always the defender. I use Pick Any General as one of my mods, and Unit Testing Fields, UT Fields, is the other. And I picked this 100 by 100 field so that it's a very fast test to do over and over. Depending on the test I'm doing, I might do 5 of each, or 7 of each, or 20 of each. In this one I did 7 of each. And I don't change the formation. I have done a whole video on formations. Formations make a very big difference, and I explain how the difference is in my formation testing, but I don't change the formations because I really want to make this super repeatable so that I can do the same test again. So I just take guard mode off, and I will send the 2 units to fight each other. And what I will do is when they get into contact, I will stop the video, and I take down the time, 59 minutes, 52 seconds. That's when they start doing damage to each other. And then I will just let this play out. And when the one of the units routs, I stop it again, and I will take the second amount of time. You can see here, for the Red-Crested Skinks, the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass are sort of beating the tar out of them, got them like 2-1. On damage, Warriors of Dragonfire Pass are very good against Red-Crested Skinks. I will say that. So the way this test goes, they route right about there, 5805. So I will take the time it stopped and the finishing health of both units, and I'll go over to the spreadsheet. So here is the spreadsheet. I have Warriors of Dragonfire Pass, 700 gold is what they're worth. The Red-Crested Skinks are worth 575. I did 7 tests. The start time is 59 minutes, 52 seconds. The finish time, I measured, I don't know what it is on this one, 58:05, yeah, 57:54, sort of like that. And then I get a battle time. So how long did this fight take? 118 seconds. I get the average 116 seconds, so about 2 minutes. What was the starting health and the finishing health of both units? That allows me to get a DPS, or damage per second, of each unit being done to the other, and I get an average at the bottom. Then I get, this is how I sort of start to do my evaluation. I'm not saying this is the end all be all ways to evaluate, but for multiplayer you have 12,400 gold to start with, so I figure a gold differential at the end of the fight between two units is a good way to at least start that evaluation. And how I get this gold differential is I take the starting hit points, or the ending hit points divided by the starting hit points multiplied by the initial cost in gold, and I subtract the other unit ending by starting, and that's how we get the gold differential. So 150 gold means that the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass on average took about 150 gold away from the Lizardmen in that battle, and I get an effective worth saying that the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass are punching above their weight, or they're worth 850 gold even though I only have to pay 700. Then I also look at the gold per minute, because that is also a very important term in terms of evaluating units. That when you're looking at how good a unit is, it's not just how efficient they are at taking gold away from the opponent, but it's how fast they do it. And that's really where the Dwarfs often struggle, is they do it very, very slowly. So I look at the gold minute, and this gold ratio is something I use to evaluate in some things. It's really how much did I pay to get that gold. It's the ratio, so I can sort of evaluate different units in a different way, and then I look at the win-loss ratio. So in this case, the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass beat the Red-Crested Skinks 7 out of 7 times, and they had an average of 53% of their health left, though lots of health left over, and they took 150 gold off those Red-Crested Skinks at 77 gold per minute. Now, when I put the Longbeards against the Red-Crested Skinks, Longbeards is 650 versus Red-Crested Skinks is 575. They took an average of 104 gold at 42 gold per minute, which is very good. That's why that's why Red-Crested Skinks are really poor in this matchup, I think, because Longbeards are pervasive and they're really poor against them. And then I looked at when I did my initial testing versus Lizardmen 2 years ago, I found that it was a very nice chevron spot with Longbeards with 4 chevrons, because the Longbeards with 4 chevrons could beat pretty reliably about 80% of the time Saurus Warriors of Shield. So I looked at that because I'm trying to find the right chevrons to put onto my Longbeards. And at that level, the Longbeards cost 768, so they're more than the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass, and they pull a little less gold. So in this case, you would say the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass are better than Longbeards in terms of fighting basic Red-Crested Skinks. They're quite a good unit in that, because they do have that bonus versus infantry. Now, I wanted to look at Longbeards, just the regular Longbeards, the miners with blasting charges. If you add those blasting charges in there, what sort of gold do you get? And this is, of course, they're going to win, but I wanted to see how fast they get that gold. Those blasting charges make a massive difference. Essentially, in this case, they're worth about 184 gold, that set of blasting charges. I always say they're worth about 200 gold, so 184 gold in this case. And they take you up from 42 gold per minute to 271 gold per minute. So they're very, very good at getting rid of Red-Crested Skinks. It's because I have 5 miners with blasting charges in my build, and they were specifically put there based on some builds I saw from A-Move Hacker, where he was using the miners with blasting charges to clear off Red-Crested Skinks and just other skinks. And obviously they're very, very good in this case. So the other thing I wanted to look at is the cohort of Sotek and the Saurus Warriors. The cohort of Sotek, when you put the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass at 700 up against the cohort of Sotek, they do win about 57% of the time. So they win more than half the time. They pull 154 gold off them. So even those cohort of Sotek, which are unbreakable, and this is with them using that damn Refuse to Die ability, which is really quite good. The Warriors of Dragonfire Pass still have a positive value and beat them more than half the time, just slightly. It's really, really close as to how many hit points they end up with. Then I wanted to look at the base Longbeards, and the base Longbeards get the tar beat out of them by the cohort of Sotek. They lose all 7 battles, but they still take positive value of 66 gold off those cohorts. So it's, even though they lose the battle in the cohorts, they're going to rout in the cohort. Sotek are going to get through. They do have a positive value. Then I wanted to look at the Longbeards with 4 chevrons, and they actually take 214 gold. So they win all 7 of the fights. They win them pretty handily with 21% of their hit points remaining at the end of the fight, which is quite good. So Longbeards with 4 chevrons are very good against the cohort of Sotek in terms of how they perform, and that's with them using that refuse to die and everything else like that. So I thought, oh, maybe Longbeards with 4 chevrons, I need to go back, because in my build right now I have just Longbeards with 1 chevron, because I wanted to go super wide and have 5 miners with blasting charges. So I thought, well, maybe it's time to look at Longbeards with 4 chevrons again, but I thought better test against the Saurus Warriors with shields. I've said Saurus Warriors with shields are the gold standard for the Lizardmen in this matchup, and I still believe they are, but not many Lizardmen player are bringing sort of 5 Saurus Warriors as their front line, or 6 Saurus Warriors in anymore. They're really relying on those red-crested skinks. So what are the Longbeards doing and the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass doing against the Saurus Warriors with shields? So the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass lose almost every time. 14% they're winning. They still have a positive gold of positive 33 gold, but just barely in that matchup. The Longbeards, the base Longbeards, lose everyone. So 7 out of 7, and they lost pretty handily. The Saurus Warriors with shield actually had 41% of their hit points left, so they actually had a lot of health left after chewing up the Longbeards. So I went back to the Longbeards with 4 chevrons, and they only won 57% of the time. They only pulled 61 gold. They did pull more than the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass, and they at least won better than half. And I thought, well, geez, I remember the Longbeards with 4 chevrons being a little bit better than that, so I wanted to go back to some old testing. So here's the original testing I did. I don't know if I have the dates on this testing. Anyways, I have the original testing. I had the Dwarf Warriors with Dragonfire Pass at 700 gold. It used to be quite a bit better, and they were actually beating the Saurus Warriors with shields 80% of the time. Now they're only winning 14% of the time. The Longbeards with 4 chevrons used to be cheaper at 757, and they were beating them 80% of the time as well. So the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass and the Longbeards with 4 chevrons were at about the same performance. And I looked down here, with 4 chevrons they were winning 80% of the time, and then 6 chevrons at 812 gold they were winning 100% of the time. And I have another set of tests over here where I do have a date. This was done in January 10th, 2018, and I did it as well in November of 2018 to do an update on them. But the Longbeards with 4 chevrons at 757 gold against the Saurus Warriors. Yeah, against the Saurus Warriors shield, Longbeards with 4 chevrons winning 85% of the time. So now at 7. They are 768 gold, and they're only winning 57% of the time. So these Saurus Warriors are performing even better than they used to against the Longbeards. And one of the reasons is this Rampage mechanic, because I'll just get up into here. They have Rampage. This is a red crested skink. So I'll just end that battle, and we'll go and take a quick peek. Okay. And where are they? So they have Rampage, but now when they Rampage, they get plus 16% charge bonus and plus 8 melee attack. It goes off when their hit points get to 20%, and that really makes a difference sort of when they're getting down to the end. But even before that, they're doing pretty good. So some small changes have occurred in that last 2 years to really improve the Saurus Warriors with shields against the Longbeards. Just the base Longbeards. So I want to keep testing, and so I want to look at Longbeards with 6 chevrons. Before they used to win 100% of the time, so I did test them. They're 826 gold. They're now more expensive with the Saurus Warriors with shields, but they do go back to winning 100% of the time. though it's not by a lot. There were some close, so I think if I ran it 20 times, they'd sort of win sort of 90% probably. They only finish with 20% of health, but at least they can win at that level. And so what does this mean? What am I planning on? What am I planning on using this testing for? What is it going to do with the builds? Well, I'll show you what I've done with my builds and sort of the things that I'm thinking about in terms of how do I build, how am I changing or evaluating or updating my build versus the Lizardmen. So I'll go back to this. I have to actually get out of here to pull up my build. So just going to quit, yes, and then go here. Okay, and we'll go up to there. Go to mod manager. I just turn my mods off so I can pull up my saved build so you can take a look at it. And if you've been paying attention to my channel, you've kind of seen sort of the build that Umaze is using and me and Amove Hacker, which are all have some similar concepts. You know, if you see Shetland Apache's build, his builds are always unique and interesting. They're quite different in a lot of ways. And I do have a replay from Grumpy Guard, I think, with the Lizardmen, which has a little bit of a different take on the build, which is actually quite a nice game. I'm going to cast it. I'm just not too sure when. I'm trying to catch up on all my casting and a whole bunch of stuff I need to do. But anyways, we'll take a look at the builds here. Okay, battles. Custom battle. All right. So the build that I have, the build that I've been using is this one right here, where I have Ungrim Iron Fist, and I have 5 miners with blasting charges, and I brought them on just for the red crested skinks, and then I have Longbeards all with 1 chevron, and then my backlines Rangers, Thunders, Althaur's Raiders, Iron Drakes, Gyrocopter, and a Bolt Thrower. And I thought I wanted to first look at, could I fit a Warriors of Dragonfire pass into this build, and sure enough, let me see, I can do it. So if I take all the chevrons off, I can have Ungrim Iron Fist, and I can actually upgrade one of these Dwarf Warriors to the Warriors of Dragonfire pass. So you can see this build is essentially, everything's the same, with the exception of I've taken all the chevrons off of everything, and I've used my remaining gold to upgrade one Dwarf Warrior to one Warrior of Dragonfire pass with that extra gold, and that's sort of a base build. Now, this build is going to do extremely well against skinks, red crested skinks and skink heavy builds, and I've been using it, and it has been doing really well because all the Lizardmen players out there right now are bringing lots of skinks to their builds. The miners with blasting charges are pretty devastating, and the Longbeards crush them, and if you bring a Warrior of Dragonfire pass, you're crushing them. But I'm wanting to develop my build to be ready for the meta as it shifts, because eventually Lizardmen players are going to start pulling away from red crested skinks and going back to sort of a beefy Saurus warrior with shields front line with 5 of them, and I wanted to look at and be ready. So one of the first builds I sort of looked at it, upgrading my build, and I wanted to go to a build like this, where I go to the 4 chevrons with 5 of my Longbeards, and that allows them to win against the Saurus Warriors shield sort of straight up, but I have to drop 1 miner with blasting charges to get that, and I still have Ungrim Iron Fist. And now, I had a long think about this, and I'm wondering, do I need to bring miners with blasting charges? I know my Longbeards demolish red crested skinks, and with any kind of chevrons they're going to win that. The miners with blasting charges are strong, and the miners, after they're done, are almost like a small anti-large unit. They're good enough against a lot of big stuff or cavalry, because cavalry tends to have really low melee defense. So miners, just base miners, do okay in mucking things up and getting some damage into those big dinosaurs if you bring them. But I thought, really, I want to have a front line with the 6 chevrons, so I could have Longbeards that are going to be extremely reliable in that front line in terms of Saurus warriors. You know, they're still going to lose pretty handily to Temple Guard, which is still definitely an option in this matchup for the Lizardmen. So this is sort of the build that I came up with. So we'll go here, and this is one of the builds that I'm looking for the Lizardmen, and that is this one right here. So what I've done is I've now upgraded my Longbeards to that 6 chevron spot at 826 gold, so they will reliably beat Saurus warriors with shields in that front line. They will absolutely demolish red-crested skinks and the cohort of Sotek. They really do give this the Dowie a very, very strong front line. Now what I did to get that, I still have the same back line: Rangers, Thunders, Ulthar's Raiders, Iron Drakes, Gyrocopter, and a Bolt Thrower. What I had to do to get that, obviously, as you can see, is I've moved miners with blasting charges to base miners, and I've taken Ungram and moved him to the base lord. Now, this is I wonder, what is this a good change? And that's what I'm going to be testing this build very specifically as to how it plays against the Lizardmen builds that are out there. But I think this is actually an improvement, because miners with blasting charges are sort of like a win more unit. And if you are familiar with the win more term, it's really, when you have units that allow you to win more, it's to say that you would win the game anyways, you just win it more handily when you have units that are sort of a win more unit. And that's a term that I've seen used in Hearthstone, that certain cards that you pick, they're a win more card. Now I'm thinking that miners with blasting charges, now these blasting charges, even though they're very, very good against skinks and red-crested skinks, they're more like a win more item, because they're not that good against Saurus warriors with shields, or Temple Guard, or Croxagors, or big dinos. They're not good at all against those units. They're really, really good against skinks, but Longbeards are already really, really good against skinks. So those blasting charges, are they just a win more quote-unquote item? So what I've done is I've used this testing to rebuild my army a little bit. I still want to have the ability to deal with Croxagors. Now, having these Longbeards chevroned up will make them last longer against Croxagors. And a Temple Guard, if I start seeing Temple Guard again, I mean, I'm sure you will. And the back line is still strong. Gyrocopter is awesome. Bolt Thrower is awesome. Trollhammer Torpedoes and Thunders are really good. But changing that front line from Ungram Iron Fist, who I really like Ungram in this matchup because he's fun, and to a base lord. Now this base lord, this is what Amove Hacker uses. He uses a base lord with no items, and he's reasonably tanky. He has 60 melee defense. Yeah, 60 melee defense, so he can kind of run around that back line. And these 5 miners, what are they for, and what do they do in this build? Really, they're sort of a second line of defense, but they're there to muck things up. And when I say muck things up, what I mean is they're just there to get in the way of big dinosaurs, of things charging through the back, of if I want to send off a unit of miners off after some skink cohorts, they'll do good, or against the blow dart skinks or anything like that. They're really going to do good against chameleon skinks or anything like that. I can send them off. Really, they're there just to make it really difficult for big things to run rampant through my backline, and so it allows my backline to stay online and keep firing. So I didn't run a proper test against Temple Guard. Temple Guard will destroy this front line really effectively, but that's a 1200 gold unit versus a 800 gold unit, and they do it very, very slowly. I know that some people use Temple Guards in this matchup because they're good armor piercing, and Temple Guard's a really strong unit. Maybe that's the right unit to do. I don't know, but Saurus warriors with shields are definitely still the gold standard. I think they're a great unit, and I think the correct Dowie build has to be prepared for a big Saurus warrior front line. And so that's why I've done the testing and reevaluated my build to go with sort of that longer. So hopefully I'll be able to get online and get some games in and see how this build actually performs against some good opposition, sort of on ladder, and hopefully I do run into some heavy skink builds, and some builds with Kroxigor, some builds with Saurus Warriors, some build with Temple Guard, that kind of stuff. But anyways, that's just sort of a test I felt like doing based on thinking about the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass and how they performed, and wanting to evaluate them compared to the Longbeards. I still think you can obviously bring the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass, looking at this build right here. Where is it? Right here. This build with the 5 Miners with Blasting Charges, 5 Longbeards, the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass. I mean, this is still a tournament legal build, and a fun build. And really, you can change Ungram out if you really want to do the absolute best. You change Ungram Iron Fist out and put in Rune Lord, and get probably a Runesmith in there as well to be really optimal. But really, I just wanted to. I'm playing with sort of the different ideas and using the testing to change my build, and I wanted to sort of share that with you guys before I go ahead and actually get on ladder and use this build against the Lizardmen, and just ask what you guys think. Have you been playing this matchup very much? I mean, what kind of builds are you seeing? Are you playing with? And what do you think of this change that I've made because of the testing? It'll be interesting to evaluate the idea before I have any games to show off. That's kind of why I wanted to show this off before I play any games. My thought is that at the worst, I might struggle against a really heavy skink build, but I'm still going to win it. Yet this build now is much more robust against a heavy Saurus build. That's sort of my supposition, I guess, my hypothesis. Still have yet to test it, but that is the idea. Anyways, just a fun little testing video. Hope you found it interesting, and I will see you soon.